happening there. Now, the City of Tshwane has denied that its finances are the worst compared to those of other metros. Now, in a report on municipalities released last week, Auditor-General Kimi Makwetu detailed how the city's liabilities has exceeded assets by more than 2 billion rand, and that it was unable to recover around 8 billion rand that it is owed the city by customers. And not only would intervention be needed to rescue the city and to continue with operations, but unauthorized expenditure also runs into over 1 billion rand. So to discuss this matter further, we're now joined by the city's Member of Mayoral Committee, or MMC, for Finance, Mare-Lise Fourie. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, and morning to your listeners and your viewers.
Thanks for your time. Now, Ms. Fourie, let's start here. Rather surprising that the city is refuting what is an official report by an office of this authority. How would you describe the city's finances, and where does it differ from what the Auditor-General is telling us?
We don't differ from what the Auditor-General is telling us. We're just explaining that you must understand what we inherited 2 financial years ago. It was a dire situation at that point, but we've improved it to extreme lengths, so much so that during the previous financial year that the Auditor-General is auditing, we managed to pay all our long-term requirements. We met our creditors, we did everything we had to do. For example, we improved our cash receipts by 2 billion rand. We've improved our gearing ratio, which means we didn't have to take up long-term loans to fund capital expenditure. So we've made great strides. We acknowledge the role that the Auditor-General plays and the independence that he has to produce in terms of looking at the numbers. But we are in a much better financial position than what we were 2 years ago.
So, in essence, there is no real divergence here in terms of what the Auditor-General is saying and what you're saying, but it would seem as though you want not to take responsibility for the poor state of finances, and you're basically blaming the previous administration for where the city finds itself now. Is that correct?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that at all. We inherited a certain situation. We put plans in place to rectify the situation. We compiled a financial sustainability plan. We are implementing that plan because it is critically important that we put the city back on a very healthy, sound financial position. And we are on the way of achieving that.
So, in recent times, you as the City of Tshwane and the administration running it at the moment have come under tremendous pressure because people have called you out on the underspending in the city. And this given a lot of service delivery protests that you've seen. You've got the homelessness situation where we've seen 5 people killed and people saying there is so much that the city can spend its money on. So why is the City of Tshwane underspending at this point?
Well, it's underspending is relative. Underspending is relative. Your budget consists of both cash expenditure as well as non-cash expenditure. And if you look at your total expenditure as we stand at the moment, we are underspent by 11%. And that is both cash and non-cash. So the focus of the city is to be on service delivery and to ensure that we achieve our objectives.
So in that regard, and I guess this was exactly what I was alluding to, the fact that you have these challenges of service delivery, you have seen people take to the streets in order to make their voices heard in this regard. So, and again, this is not peculiar to Tshwane, but our focus right now in this discussion between you and I is about Tshwane. So why is Tshwane underspending when people have needs in the city?
Again, I need to emphasize, underspending is relative. We aim to spend what we budget. And ultimately, there are certain corrections that you have to do at the end of a financial year, where we are now. So the 11% underspending was at the previous months. So we've not calculated the final results of the city, which will only be available once we compile the financial statements. And our focus is absolutely on service delivery.
So let's take a look at your unauthorized expenditure. 1.1 billion is what it stands at, as stated in the report. Now, 1.1 billion is quite a bit of money. So where was that money used?
Now, again, unauthorized expenditure means it's expenditure over and above what was budgeted for. It contains both non-cash and cash. Right. The bulk of that amount is non-cash. So it's not expenditure that was expended out of the bank account of the municipality. It is a recalculation of our impairment of debtors. It was a recalculation of our depreciation of assets, because we are correcting our asset register. So it's not 1.1 billion rand that left the bank of the city. It is, the bulk of it is non-cash.
So does that, in your view, alter the situation in any material way?
It alters the situation in ensuring that we have improved our cash coverage. We've improved our investments in the bank, because you have to have certain financial ratios to be financially sound. You can't just spend money because you have great needs, and we accept that, but you can't just spend the money if you don't have it. So you have to build up your reserves, able to invest in your infrastructure and your services going forward. So we had to take corrective action to ensure that we remain financially sustainable.
So where was the bulk of that unauthorized expenditure used? Where was it spent?
No, it was not spent. I'm trying to explain to you. It was not spent. It is a calculation of what your impairment of your debtors are. Your impairment is shown as an expenditure on your financial statements, on your income and expenditure statement. It's not an expenditure, it's a simple calculation of provision.
So what have you made the greatest provision for?
For the non-payment of debtors. We accept.
So that is your single biggest item?
Yes, that is the single biggest item. Because we have to ensure that what we show on our balance sheet is a realistic, fair assessment of our assets and our liabilities. And if you don't impair your debtors according to what you expect to be non-payment, your balance sheet does not have a fair reflection of your financial position.
So the current liquidity position of the City of Tshwane, can you give us an indication of that, given the AG's report says the finances are so dire in the city that you might not be able to continue paying for operations in the next 12 months. So how would you characterize that financial liquidity position?
Okay, let's put it into perspective. This is the financial year 2017-18. We are now at the end of 2018-19. The municipality is in a position where it can provide its services, it can collect its debt, it operates normally. So we've extended the next year without any financial problems. So we look forward to seeing what the Auditor-General will be saying about our financial results for 2018-19.
All right. So we're not going to talk about what has been said now. We're going to wait for the next one, is what you say.
Yes, absolutely. we've managed to improve the financial situation during this financial year, and it will reflect when we present the financial statements.
So you know, with regard to, again, you've explained to us the impaired, the impaired payments that you have taken precautions against and all of that. But talk to us about some of the contracts that have garnered quite a bit of media attention, like the Glad Africa contract. Where is that at right now? What is being done about that particular situation?
Well, the Glad Africa contract has been terminated. It has finally come to an end on the 30th of June of 2019. So that was the end of the contract. It was a negotiated settlement to finally end that unfortunate event.
So, and with regard to some of those electricity meters and everything that went on around that contract, you know, what is being done in that regard?
All right, that contract has also been resolved. You might recall that the court accepted a settlement between the company who provided the smart meters and the City of Tshwane because of the irregularity of that contract. And the agreement was that we would replace all the meters that was previously implemented and installed by that company. That has been done. The time frame for the finalization of that was also on the 30th of June. So the city has taken over all 13,900 meters.
So in just talking about those two contracts, how much has the city lost?
Lost is a big word.
But Ms. Fourie, in fairness, everything that I've asked you this morning, you've given me very technical responses to. So it would seem as though you're not really willing to accept things like losses or anything that reflects negatively on the books of the city. But, you know, as a layperson looking on, it is a loss that the city has suffered, or isn't it?
Of course the city has suffered. Those contracts were deemed irregular, but a contract that you've entered into as a city can't simply be stopped until such time as that contract has either been deemed irregular in terms of a court of law or in terms of an agreement that you've entered into. So we had to finalize those contracts before we could enter into a different scenario. So of course there was a huge cost for the city. For example, on the smart meter contract, I think in total the commission we paid to that company was in excess of 4 billion rand. Now that was in revenue lost to the city. But you can't just stop and walk away, you have to rectify it.
So what have you done to rectify it, and how much of that is the city able to recoup?
No, the city is not able to recoup any of those commissions paid to the city. That was the judgment of the court. So the final agreement was that we take over we install our own meters. The company takes their meters and we're done. We don't pay 1 cent of commission anymore. So any sale of electricity through those meters is for the coffers of the city.
And just finally, going forward, what's your assessment for the city and its finances? Will you be able to comply with all your obligations financially going forward?
Yes, absolutely. We are paying our creditors. We have no debt. As far as that is concerned, we have money in the bank. We are able to provide services.
And thanks so much for your time this morning. City of Tshwane's Member of Mayoral Committee for Finance, Mare-Lise Fourie, for discussing some of the financial matters around the City of Tshwane and also the Auditor-General's report and what that reflected. Brings us up to 7 o'clock. Let's bring you your latest news bulletin.